Hi there, I'm Sloane. You ever get that sinking feeling, like you were the only one who didn't get the joke? Yeah, that was me. Standing alone on a crumbling dock, blindfold off, heart pounding, while my sister and her friends sped away, laughing. It was supposed to be a birthday prank. They called it a joke, I called it betrayal. But that wasn't even the worst part. The lie ran deeper. Legal documents forged in my name, my company stripped from me, and my own mother filing to declare me missing. And what if I hadn't come back? Well, there was a life insurance clause for that too. Now, I'm living on a yacht I bought myself, under a name they don't know, in waters they'll never reach. But tell me, how does a family go from brunch invitations to plotting your disappearance? Stick around. You're going to want to hear this. 3 days before my 37th birthday, my sister Rowan sent me a text I hadn't expected in a decade. Hey, Maeve and I are putting together a little girls' trip. Just the three of us. No drama, promise. You in? The message was short, casual, almost like it was no big deal. Like we were a normal family who did normal things like spontaneous bonding weekends on boats. I stared at it on my phone screen, letting the silence of my living room wrap around me. Asheville had turned cold again, as if spring had changed its mind. I sat on the edge of my couch, phone in one hand, my other hand still holding the spoon from my half-eaten yogurt. I should have said no. Every part of my gut told me this was off. But hope, that stupid, persistent thing, made me hesitate. It always came back around birthdays, like clockwork. Later that afternoon, I called my mom to feel things out. She answered on the second ring, voice syrupy sweet like always when she thought she was playing peacekeeper. "Oh, honey, I think it's lovely they're reaching out," Marion said, like we hadn't spent the last 4 years barely exchanging words. "Rowan just wants to reconnect. Let bygones be bygones. Family is family, Sloane." I could almost hear her smile through the phone, that practiced little condescending hum at the end of her sentences that always made me feel like a child asking for something unreasonable. I nodded silently, forgetting she couldn't see me. She continued. "She said you've been distant lately. I told her, give her a reason to come back in." That was the bait. The hook? An all-expenses-paid birthday weekend aboard a rented cruiser with my estranged sister, her socialite best friend Maeve, and a few of their carefully selected entourage. The kind of trip influencers post in curated Instagram carousels with captions like, "Unplugging with my girls, saltwater and soul talk." I responded to Rowan with a thumbs-up emoji. That's all she got from me. That night, I was at my mother's house, picking up an old duffel bag I'd stored there years ago, and Marion insisted I stay for dinner. It was just the two of us, her passive-aggressive praise for Rowan's maturity and growth marinating the air between mouthfuls of pot roast. Afterwards, I asked to borrow her laptop. Mine had bricked last week and I needed to confirm a wire transfer for work. She waved me toward the den and told me the password hadn't changed. I opened the browser, expecting to find Facebook tabs or shopping carts filled with abandoned cardigans. Instead, an email thread caught my eye, still logged into Rowan's account. Subject line, GoPro angle check. Let's get her face when she realizes she's stranded. I clicked, breath catching in my throat as if I'd been slapped. Maeve had replied to the original message with a laughing emoji and a file attachment. "This test clip is gold. Can't wait to do it for real. I want to see her cry." There were more replies, strategizing how to spin the prank on camera, where to stash the GoPro, even details about pulling away in the boat, just far enough for me to panic a little but not actually die. My name was in every message. They called it a harmless reset. They joked about how it would put things in perspective for the clingy sister. Maeve even referred to me as the legacy leech. I sat there for a full minute, letting the words etch themselves into my skin. My fingers moved before my mind did. I logged out, wiped the search history, and closed the laptop as if it had never been opened. I didn't tell my mom. I didn't scream or cry or flip the table. Instead, I walked outside, sat in my car, and stared at the dashboard until my reflection in the windshield steadied. This wasn't the first betrayal, just the most sophisticated. People like Rowan didn't start with something this big. They built up to it. A comment here, a forgotten invite there. I'd spent years giving them the benefit of the doubt, chalking things up to different priorities or misunderstandings. That ends now. Back at my apartment, I unlocked the encrypted folder on my phone labeled Avery Lane. It wasn't a name anyone knew me by, just a pseudonym I'd used when corresponding with a yacht broker down in Florida, a retired Navy captain selling his last boat to the right kind of investor. Avery Lane had been asking the right questions. She'd booked a viewing for this weekend, under the guise of exploring offshore startup ventures. Rowan and Maeve didn't know it, but I had planned this weekend too, only not for champagne toasts or apology selfies. While they plotted how to leave me behind, I'd been planning how to finally get away from all of them, for good. And that boat? It wouldn't just be a purchase, it would be proof that I was done being the joke, the afterthought, the woman they laughed at over group chats and cheap wine. I checked the group text Rowan had sent earlier, confirming the pickup time. Friday, 10 a.m. sharp, pack light. I typed back one word. Can't wait. The next morning, I woke up to sunlight cutting sharp across my bedroom wall. Too bright for comfort, too clean for what I dreamt about. My stomach still had that faint churn, like I'd eaten something off the night before. Only it wasn't food poisoning. It was the bitter taste of pretending everything was fine. Rowan had texted again just after 8. Brunch planning at the lake house. Come early if you can. We've got stuff to prep. The emojis made my skin itch. I pulled on a hoodie, tied my hair into a low knot, and drove with the windows down. The road out to the lake curved through tall Carolina pines, the kind that let just enough sun in to warm the top of your knees, but still held a shadow behind every tree. The kind of road you could get lost on, and no one would know unless they bothered to look. When I got to the house, Maeve's car was already in the driveway, along with a red Tacoma I didn't recognize, probably Ellis's or Wes's. The whole place looked like it belonged on a real estate brochure for curated rustic retreats, complete with cedar siding, Adirondack chairs, and a cooler filled with seltzers on the porch. I knocked once and stepped inside. "Hello?" Rowan's voice called from somewhere out back. "We're just setting up. Make yourself at home." I kicked off my shoes and wandered through the house. I was going to look for the bathroom, maybe wash my face before putting on the fake smile I'd spent a decade perfecting. But as I passed the kitchen, I heard laughter, low, familiar, sharp. I followed it like a bloodhound. The sliding door to the back patio was cracked open just enough to hear every word. Maeve was already buzzed, her voice like broken glass on tile. "We just gotta get her face when it hits her. Like really hits her. Imagine it, she's all, 'Wait, where are you guys going?' And we're like, 'Oops, priceless.'" Rowan laughed so hard she wheezed. "She's always been the dramatic one. This'll finally prove it. A few hours on that island and she'll melt down, just like always. We'll frame it like some emotional reset." I didn't breathe. Ellis chimed in, "We'll call it emotional boot camp. Turn off the Wi-Fi, leave her a granola bar, and let her cry into the bushes." Wes, the only one who sounded remotely uneasy, muttered, "This is borderline illegal, you know. Like, what if something actually happens to her?" Maeve snapped back, "God, Wes, grow a spine. It's not like we're dropping her in the ocean." Rowan added, "Exactly. It's an island. People kayak there all the time. It's not like she's gonna die. Worst case, she gets a sunburn and a new perspective." Maeve, or a therapy bill. They all burst out laughing. I backed away from the patio door so quietly, my own heartbeat seemed too loud. I walked down the hallway and stood in the laundry room for a full minute, staring at the washing machine like it had answers. The old version of me, the one they still thought they were dealing with, would have burst through that door and called them every name I could think of, would have thrown something, made a scene, confirmed their script. But the version of me standing in that hallway, she didn't need to yell, she needed to listen, so I did. I took a deep breath, rolled my shoulders back, and walked into the kitchen like I hadn't heard a word. Rowan was pouring mimosas. "There she is. Want orange juice or grapefruit?" "Whatever's cold," I said, my voice even, my smile practiced. "This place is beautiful." She lit up like a brand rep. "Right? We thought it would be a fun send-off spot before the boat tomorrow, low-key. Just the girls and no drama." Maeve sauntered in, sunglasses on indoors like always. No cell service out by the island, by the way, she said, sipping her drink. Hope you're not too attached to your phone. I smiled. Might be good for me to unplug. Probably overdue. They laughed, pleased with my compliance. Rowan handed me a croissant and launched into a monologue about the playlist she'd made for the boat ride. I nodded in all the right places, even complimented the linen napkins she'd folded into tiny boats. Inside, I was counting seconds, measuring how long each smile lasted, noticing who looked away first when I made eye contact. They didn't see it, but I was watching everything. By the time I got home that night, I'd placed 3 orders: a solar-powered phone charger, a waterproof pouch for my documents and backup drive, and a burner SIM card for international use. Then I scheduled a call with Captain Donnelly. Avery Lane had a few more questions before finalizing her yacht visit. I wasn't just playing along now. I was setting the terms of my own departure. The morning air felt too clean, like the world was trying a little too hard to act normal. I showed up exactly at 9:59 a.m., 1 minute early, just like they'd asked. The dock smelled of brine and motor oil, and the rented boat, an obnoxiously shiny cruiser, was already buzzing with fake excitement. Rowan stood at the edge of the pier with her hands on her hips, dressed in white linen, like some dollar store version of Martha Stewart. Maeve waved at me from the bow with a mimosa in one hand and a phone in the other, probably already recording. "Happy birthday, birthday girl!" she yelled with that smugness she couldn't hide if her life depended on it. "Big day," Rowan added, hugging me like she was squeezing out guilt. I smiled. "This'll be fun." Wes handed me a paper cup of lukewarm coffee. His eyes didn't quite meet mine. Ellis just gave me a lazy head nod and went back to fiddling with the sound system. About 20 minutes into the ride, the boat started veering off the main coastal path, deeper into inlet waters that looked like they hadn't seen tourists in years. Thick with marshland, driftwood, and silence. The kind of place Google Maps would call limited data available. Maeve leaned over the cooler, pulled out a small box, and grinned like a magician revealing her final trick. "For the birthday girl," she said, holding out a long, folded piece of fabric. It was silk, champagne-colored, soft. "A blindfold?" I asked, keeping my tone light. "For the surprise," she said, and winked. I held her gaze just a second longer than I should have. Then I turned to Ellis and handed him the scarf. "Tie it. Just don't muss my hair." He hesitated. "You sure?" "Positive," I said. "I trust y'all." The knot tightened at the back of my head. I could feel Ellis's fingers linger an extra moment like he wasn't totally on board. I played it cool. They spun me around once, twice. Gravel crunched under the tires. The boat had docked. The air changed, salty and still. I could smell sun-baked wood and weeds. Someone took my arm and helped me down. The ground beneath my shoes was hot, loose, unfamiliar. "All right, birthday girl," Rowan said, her voice high with artificial cheer. "Time to make a wish." The scarf came off. I was standing in front of a half-collapsed dock station with rusted signage and a weather-warped shack just barely standing. Behind me, the boat's engine revved. Maeve lifted her phone. "Smile!" Then, loud and clear, "See you when you find your way back!" They were laughing. Rowan, Ellis, Maeve. Laughing like kids who just egged a house. The boat peeled away, wake slapping against the pilings. And there it was. Sitting in the open cooler they'd left behind, beside a melting pack of seltzers and a half-eaten granola bar, was the GoPro. Still blinking, still rolling. The surprise wasn't a celebration, it was humiliation. Documentation. A keepsake. I didn't cry. Not even a tear. Instead, I stood still and let the sound of their laughter burn itself into my memory, like cigarette ash on skin. Then I walked. Behind the shack was a narrow path that led into a small thicket of trees. I moved quickly, knowing the boat would be out of earshot in under 2 minutes. Once I was hidden, I dropped my purse and went straight to work. Out came the solar charger, then the burner phone. I texted a single phrase to Captain Donnelly. "Location active. ETA confirmed?" His reply came within 60 seconds. 10 minutes, West Cove. While I waited, I took out the GoPro. It was still warm from recording. I played back the last few seconds. Maeve's voice was shrill, unmistakable. "She's gonna cry. You think she'll pee herself?" Ellis's laugh was sharp and ugly. Rowan's voice followed. Honestly, I hope she does. Might be the first real thing she's done in years. I rewound it, just to hear them say it again. Then I turned the GoPro off, wrapped it in a towel, and slipped it into the waterproof pouch. 8 minutes later, I saw the boat. It wasn't flashy like theirs. Captain Donnelly's vessel was old but solid, painted a dull gray that blended into the sea foam and shadows. He cut the engine halfway to shore and let it drift the rest of the way. I stepped out from the brush just as he threw a rope around a bleached stump sticking out of the sand. "Miss Lane?" he called out. "Right here," I answered. He offered his hand to help me aboard. "Everything go as planned?" I nodded. "Perfectly." As the island disappeared behind us, I pulled out the GoPro and replayed the audio one more time. "She's gonna cry." But I didn't. I smiled. Charleston's skyline came into view just after sunrise, low and uneven, like it had been held back on purpose. The city didn't try to impress you. It just existed, steady and still. That was exactly what I needed. Captain Donnelly didn't ask questions. He handed me a small duffel bag I'd left with him earlier in the week, full of carefully packed clothes and a manila folder marked with my pseudonym, Avery Lane. The only ID inside was a temporary license from Montana, fake but high grade, enough to get me into any hotel without raising an eyebrow. "I'll circle back in 4 days," he said, tightening the rope to the dock behind the quiet marina. "But you won't need me again, will you?" "No," I said, stepping onto the wooden planks. "I think I've got it from here." He nodded and disappeared without a goodbye. I found a boutique hotel tucked between two art galleries on a quiet block near Broad Street. Its front desk clerk didn't ask questions when I slid the license across the counter and paid in cash. My name for the next week was still Avery Lane. The room was small, white curtains, antique desk, coastal paintings that looked more like stock images than art. But it was clean, quiet, and invisible. That's all I needed. The first thing I did was pull the SD card from the GoPro and lock it inside the hotel's wall safe, along with my burner phone and passport. I didn't bother unpacking. I didn't sit. I didn't even eat. Instead, I turned on the TV. Within seconds, I found it. Local news. Breaking banner across the bottom. Woman missing off island coast. Family pleads for help. There she was. Rowan, standing at a podium with a Charleston County Sheriff's deputy just behind her, putting on the performance of a lifetime. Her voice was breathy, cracking just enough to sound authentic. "She's always been sensitive," she said, blinking at the cameras. "She's struggled with emotional regulation since we were kids. We thought this trip might help, might give her peace. But now she's missing, and we're scared. I'm scared." Maeve was behind her, dabbing her eyes like a soap actress on her third DUI. She leaned into the mic just enough to catch the cameras. "Sloane's not well. We didn't want to say it before, but she hasn't been stable for a long time. We just want her home." And then my mother, Marion, regal in her pearl earrings, hands folded like a preacher's wife. "My daughter has a history of delusions," she said flatly. "She imagines betrayal where there is none. She isolates, sabotages. This is a pattern." A dull throb hit the back of my neck. Not rage, not sadness, recognition. This wasn't new. This wasn't panic. This was the playbook they'd been using since I was 12. Every time I questioned them, every time I stepped out of line, they didn't yell. They rewrote the script. They called it concern. They called me unstable. I picked up the hotel remote and threw it at the wall. Not hard, not like a tantrum, just enough to hear it crack. Then I sat down and took notes. Names, statements, verbatim. And I ordered the transcript. The power in this moment wasn't in screaming back. It was in silence. Documentation. Strategy. If I showed my hand now, they'd spin it, frame it, say I forged it all, that I edited the video, that I was paranoid. Alone. So I waited. I pulled the GoPro footage back up, transferred it onto my private laptop, the one Rowan didn't know existed. I watched them all, over and over, laughing as they planned to leave me. I slowed the video, time-stamped the worst moments. Maeve. "She's gonna cry, maybe wet herself, that's viral content." Rowan. "We'll say she needed space, we'll say she walked off." Wes. "Y'all sure this is smart?" Ellis. "Smart? It's genius." I didn't flinch. I wrote it all down. Then I opened my email. There was only one name I could think of: Alden Reed. I'd met him at a business conference 3 years ago. He ran a private investment group out of Paris, discreet but effective. We'd talked for 20 minutes at a vendor mixer, long enough for him to remember my brain, not my baggage. Subject: possible collaboration. Body: Mr. Reed, it's been a while. I think I'm ready to talk business. Also, there's a story you might want to hear. Best, Avery Lane. I clicked send. 10 minutes passed, then 20, then my inbox pinged. One sentence. Come to Paris, bring the footage. I booked the next available flight out of Charleston. No checked bags, no return ticket. I traveled as Avery Lane and spoke only when necessary. By the time the plane touched down in Paris, I'd already decided this wasn't about hiding. This was about reclaiming my name on my terms. Alden's assistant met me at Charles de Gaulle holding a sleek black sign that simply read, Miss Lane. No drama, no fanfare. Just a driver in a tailored coat, an unmarked black car, and the kind of silence that felt like sanctuary. The drive to Alden's office was quiet, the city drifting past in tones of ash and gold. We pulled up to a building tucked into the 8th arrondissement. All old stone and understated wealth. No brass plaques or company logos, just power wrapped in discretion. Alden waited in a private meeting room, lined with soundproof glass and minimalist decor. He didn't greet me with questions or pleasantries. He just gestured to the leather seat across from him. I sat, unzipped my bag, and placed the GoPro and 2 flash drives on the table. I'm not here for revenge, I said, locking eyes with him. This isn't evidence. It's insurance. I'm not trying to destroy them. I just refuse to let them destroy me. He studied me for a long moment. Understood, he said. Would you prefer espresso or wine? I almost smiled. Espresso, I replied. He poured it himself. We talked for 2 hours. He never asked about the past directly. No curiosity about the boat or the betrayal. Instead, he asked about my company, Devon Concepts, what we'd built, who held the patents, where the real value lived. I remember your name from a financial journal, actually, he said, clicking through a profile on his tablet. You were featured for your AI logistics model 2 years ago, quietly revolutionary. And now, your name's nowhere. I leaned back, arms folded. They've been working on that. He didn't need to ask who they were. Later that afternoon, Alden introduced me to his legal consultant, Madame Cazalet. Elegant, blunt, French, deadly efficient. She pulled out a folder with printed documents and set them in front of me like they were nothing. Your mother, Marion Devon, has filed to assume temporary control of Devon Concepts, she explained, switching to flawless English. Filed as medical leave. The form lists mental incapacity due to suspected trauma or voluntary disappearance. Effective immediately. My mouth went dry. That's not all, she continued, sliding a second file across the table. Your family has begun petitioning the North Carolina courts to declare you legally missing. Testimonies from Marion, Rowan, and a third woman, Maeve Cartwright, state that you exhibited erratic behavior prior to your trip. They claim you were under emotional distress, possibly suicidal. I didn't speak. I just stared at the pages, at the lies dressed in soft concern. The phrases hit like ice. We love her, but we were worried. She pushed people away. She always carried that darkness. They weren't satisfied with pushing me out. Now they wanted to erase me. I closed the folder carefully. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I simply stood and walked out of the meeting room, past the assistant, past the front desk, until I reached the quiet street outside. Paris was alive. Bakers setting out fresh pastries, couples arguing over which metro line to take, children tugging at their mother's sleeves. And here I was, walking along the Seine, invisible in a city that didn't care what your last name was. They used to say I was the fragile one, that I overreacted, that I couldn't take a joke. They'd laugh while I cleaned up the messes they left, at work, at home, during holidays. I stayed late when the developers quit. I answered phones while they posed on beaches for their girl boss Instagram reels. I built the thing they're trying to steal. Now they call me unstable. I stopped at the Pont des Arts Bridge and leaned on the railing, the wind tugging at my coat. I thought about all the nights I stayed in the office until 3 a.m., coding through blurry eyes while Rowan slept off martinis on my couch. All the times I gave credit away because she needed the win more. And now she'd be sitting in my chair. But not forever. Back at the apartment Alden had arranged, a sleek two-bedroom loft with a view of the Eiffel Tower, I powered up the laptop and drafted an email to a discreet litigation firm in New York. Then I encrypted a second drive with the full GoPro footage and had it overnighted to my attorney of record, just in case. And then I wrote one final message, to Alden. Let them proceed. I'll respond in my own time. He called within the hour. What's your next move? He asked. I stared out the window. Whatever makes them believe they've won. The next morning, I woke to a flagged email marked, Urgent Beneficiary Update in all caps. It was from a legal assistant I hadn't heard from in over a year, Terry Klein, someone who used to handle my old insurance policies before I shifted everything in-house. The message was short. One sentence. Change of beneficiary confirmed. Per submitted health concerns. Attached was the updated documentation. My name, my birth date, my policy number, my mother's name, Marion Devon, listed in bold as the 100% primary beneficiary. If I died tomorrow, she'd collect everything. Quietly, legally. I stared at the screen, my hand frozen midair. Not from surprise, just from the confirmation that this was never just about humiliating me or shaming me out of my own company. This was about wiping me off the board completely. If not in flesh, then on paper. It wasn't some over-the-top murder plot. It was more elegant than that, more suburban. If I happened to stay gone, if I just wandered too far, got overwhelmed, stopped returning messages, the paperwork would already be in motion. The life insurance, the missing person filings, the mental health statements already on file. This wasn't control anymore. This was a soft erasure. I got dressed in silence, poured a black coffee I didn't finish, then picked up my secure phone and called someone I hadn't spoken to since last Christmas. Aaron, hey, I said. My voice was calm, too calm. I need to ask a question, off the record. There was a pause, then a cough on the other end. Aaron worked in the records department at the Buncombe County Courthouse. She was detail-oriented, allergic to confrontation, and used to be the kind of friend who'd bake you banana bread when your car got towed. Sloan, she whispered. Jesus, I didn't think I'd ever hear from you again. Are you okay? That depends, I replied. Can you tell me why a document transferring insurance beneficiary rights was pushed through without notice to the policyholder? Specifically one where the policyholder was missing? Dead silence. I didn't speak again. I waited. Eventually, she sighed. I didn't process it myself, but I knew about it. There was pressure. What kind of pressure? Her voice dropped lower. Your mom made a donation to the county scholarship fund, like 2 days before the update. A big one. It wasn't illegal exactly. But she told the clerk it was urgent and gave all the supporting psych documents. Your sister's name was on the cover letter. And you didn't say anything. Aaron swallowed hard. I could hear it. I needed help with my son's tuition. The donation covered his final semester. They said you were gone, Sloan. They made it sound like you weren't coming back. I didn't scream. I didn't even raise my voice. I get it, I said flatly. You chose survival. Sloan, I didn't mean... I understand, I interrupted, but I won't be calling again. I hung up before she could try to make me feel sorry for her. They weren't just silencing me now. They were buying people who used to love me. And they were using the same playbook I'd spent a lifetime learning, smiling, hugging, donating, while they tightened the noose. By noon, I was sitting with Alden's legal advisor again. This time I didn't hesitate. I want full documentation frozen, I said. No transactions in my name processed in the U.S. without my biometric confirmation. Notarized, facial scan, retinal, if needed. Consider it done, she replied, no hesitation. Then I pulled out the GoPro drive again. I need a clean breakdown of every bank transfer from Devon Concepts operating account starting 6 months before my birthday, especially family-related disbursements. They thought I wouldn't notice, I muttered half to myself. They forgot who wrote the budget code from scratch. She nodded without asking questions. By nightfall, I had a draft. An anonymous tip, constructed with surgical precision. The kind of thing you only learn how to build after years of watching others weaponize paper trails. Subject: fraudulent beneficiary claim on insured American citizen body. To whom it may concern, I am writing to alert you to a potentially unlawful change of life insurance beneficiary designation involving a high-value policy and a missing person report currently filed in North Carolina. Attached you will find a copy of the policy prior to modification. The newly submitted change request, medical claims and third-party statements fabricated to support presumed death testimonies, contradicting mental health claims, time-stamped GoPro footage as corroboration. I hit send, not because I needed them to act immediately, but because I needed it documented, needed it in motion, one breadcrumb at a time. As I closed my laptop, I whispered into the quiet Paris night, "Try stealing from a woman who's still breathing." The phone rang and Alden's name flashed on the screen. It woke me up to the new day. I picked it up on the second ring. "Get dressed. Now. We have a problem." Within the hour, I was sitting across from him in a marble-paneled conference room, the kind where secrets weren't whispered. They were documented. He tossed a packet on the table. Legal documents, fresh filings. "They didn't even wait the full 30 days, he said flatly. "They've initiated the estate transition. If you're declared missing through the end of this month, everything, your shares, your rights, even your patents, passes to Rowan." My stomach didn't drop. It revolted. "Under what clause?" I asked. He flipped to the third page. "Recent amendment, 2 months ago, supposedly signed by you." I stared at the signature. It looked right, the loops, the slant, even the pressure points. But I had never signed it. Alden had already taken the next step. "I sent it to a specialist in Geneva. Digital forensics and handwriting analysis. I didn't want to come to you without proof." I folded my arms, biting back the rage tightening in my chest. "And?" He slid another report across the table. Forged, crafted using a machine learning program trained on my older documents, enough to pass surface-level scrutiny, but not enough to escape detailed verification. "They didn't just want your company," Alden said, voice low. "They built a reality where you were never coming back. They planned the whole thing like a merger, a death merger." I nodded slowly, my fingers curling into my palms. "Then it's time I returned to the land of the living." We launched Phase 1 that afternoon. Not a lawsuit, not a press conference, just a leak. An encrypted folder sent to a financial blogger in New York known for his clean hands and sharp claws. He'd exposed corporate tax fraud rings and brought down a hedge fund CEO. Subject line: "Heiress declared dead while still breathing?" Within 24 hours, the blog was everywhere. Reddit, Twitter, Business Insider. The story moved like wildfire, fueled by equal parts shock and morbid curiosity. Devon Concepts stock took a dive. Investors demanded explanations. Board members called emergency meetings. And through it all, I stayed quiet. Because silence, used correctly, is the loudest weapon of all. But behind that silence, I worked. I assembled every ex-employee Marion had fired without cause, found the junior analysts Rowan had publicly humiliated. I gave them NDAs to shred and voices to use. I collected names, timelines, payout schedules, pieced together a flowchart of nepotism and fraud that made my island exile look like a warm-up act. I didn't need revenge. I needed the truth documented. They wanted a ghost. I'd give them a witness stand instead. The day the story peaked at number 3 on Apple News, Alden's phone rang. He answered, cool and clipped. "Rowan?" A pause. "No, I'm not surprised." Another beat. Then he looked at me and smiled slightly. "She's alive, and she's ready." Alden didn't have to tell me twice. I packed my bag that night, not because I was nervous, but because I'd waited long enough to face them. Letting people like my mother twist the narrative wasn't strategy. It was a warning. And I was done warning. The Atlantic Meridian boardroom in Manhattan had walls the color of fog and chairs that swallowed your spine. I wore navy slacks, a silk blouse that didn't wrinkle under pressure, and a face that told no stories. Rowan was the first to notice me. Her jaw slackened just enough to see the panic flicker in her eyes. Maeve nearly dropped her phone. "Marion?" She stood up like she might faint. One hand to her chest, the other reaching for me. "Sweetheart," she breathed, voice trembling, "we didn't know you were alive." I cut her off before she could perform her Oscar reel. "Then you shouldn't have already spent the money." Alden cleared his throat. "Let's begin." He slid a leather folder across the table. Inside were certified copies, every forgery, every backdated memo, every transfer. My signature, but not mine. My authority, but illegally invoked. I waited until the murmurs from their legal reps stopped. Then I pressed play on the GoPro footage. Shortened, clean, sharp. Maeve's voice cackled from the speakers. "She's gonna cry. Maybe wet herself." Rowan chimed in. "We'll say she had a breakdown, just walked off." Laughter, then silence. No one at that table could speak. "Are you all out of words now?" I asked, not cruelly, just finished. Marian's face twisted. "That was private, family talk. You've always been so dramatic." Maeve was already whispering to her attorney, trying to shield herself. "I thought it was just a prank. I didn't know—" Rowan snapped. "Don't turn on me, Maeve. This was your idea." Alden raised a hand like a judge calling order. "Let's be clear. Miss Devon is here because all of you lied to the court, committed document fraud, and actively tried to claim her estate while she was alive. You don't get to plead confusion now." I leaned forward slightly. "This isn't about payback. It's about memory. Mine's working just fine." By mid-afternoon, the formalities were done. Rowan was removed from the Devon Concepts Board, effective immediately. Marian's public image cratered. Between leaked clips and internal whistleblowers, her consulting contracts dissolved overnight. Maeve's makeup brand issued a statement cutting ties with her. One of her sponsorships pulled all content within the hour. And me? I issued one press statement. "I'm alive, and I remember everything." I didn't feel triumphant walking out. I didn't want to cry or scream or celebrate. I just felt quiet. That night, I wandered alone through the city. My heels echoed against stone, drowned out by taxis and distant sirens. Justice didn't feel cinematic. It felt like walking out of a tunnel and realizing the sky was still above you. Always had been. At the hotel, I texted Alden. "I need one more week before Paris. Just time." His reply was immediate. "Take all you need." I unpacked only one thing, my old leather journal, the one I used to scribble business pitches and dinner receipts. I flipped it open and wrote on the first clean page, Chapter 1, I survived. Now I decide what living really means. A week later, I returned to Paris. The city greeted me the same way it had the first time, unconcerned, unimpressed, beautifully indifferent. But this time, I wasn't the woman hiding in its shadows. I walked through the courtyard of my apartment building with purpose, boots clicking against old stone, the late afternoon light casting long slashes of gold across the floor. Alden had left a bouquet of irises on the kitchen counter, my favorite. No note, just a folded card with 5 words scrawled in fountain pen. "There's power in walking away." I stood in the quiet. No ticking clocks, no footsteps upstairs, no echo of anyone's opinion but my own. My old self would have filled the silence with music, or emails, or someone else's voice. I let it be empty, peacefully so. I opened my journal to the second page. Now I begin. The yacht waited at Port de l'Arsenal. I named her the Marrow, after a line I once underlined in a book I read during my worst year. Live deep and suck out all the marrow of life. She wasn't flashy, sleek, simple, self-sufficient, solar-equipped, radar-shielded, registered under an LLC no one in my family would recognize. I didn't need a crew. I needed distance. I needed sea. I took her out at dawn. The engine hummed beneath me, gentle as breath. No champagne bottle cracked across her bow. No send-off from weeping onlookers. Just me, barefoot, navigating past the last slip of the city skyline. There's something holy about water that stretches farther than your past. It erases things without asking permission. It lets you start over, not because you deserve to, but because you finally said, enough. I brought no keepsakes, no heirlooms, not even photos, just my passport, my journals, and the flash drive with my story. They took my title, my company, but not my mind, not my story, not this vessel slicing the sea like a second chance. Rowan's letter arrived via Alden, slipped into an envelope as thin as her apologies. It wasn't long, just one line. I didn't think you'd ever fight back. No, I'm sorry. No, we were wrong. I read it twice, then tucked it into a wooden box on the yacht labeled Unsent Correspondence. Right next to old family birthday cards, contracts I never signed, and the boarding pass from the day they left me behind. Closure isn't about forgiveness. It's about knowing what you no longer need to carry. I don't hate Rowan. I don't wish ill on Maeve or even Marion. I just wish them gone. From my thoughts, my calendar, my horizon. Today I floated 3 miles off the coast. The sun hit the water like a blessing. I brewed tea and wrote my final journal entry. I didn't just survive them. I survived the me who thought she needed their love to matter. The satellite phone pinged. Alden again. He needed me to review a proposal for a women's fund we were launching. Survivors, startups, stories that couldn't be erased. I smiled and typed back. Give me 2 hours, I'm drifting. Then I closed the lid on my laptop, stepped onto the deck, and let the wind take my hair like a ceremony. I'm not rebuilding the life they tried to steal. I'm building one they never imagined I'd claim. I'm no longer the girl they left behind. I'm the woman who sailed away. Absolutely. Here is a heartfelt, culturally resonant ending that fits the tone of the full story and seamlessly encourages audience reflection and interaction. Before I close this chapter completely, let me say something. Not as the woman who sailed away, but as someone who once stayed too long waiting for an apology that never came. If you're watching this and you've ever felt like the joke, the afterthought, the one they thought wouldn't fight back, please hear me when I say, you are allowed to walk away. You are allowed to heal in peace. You are allowed to rewrite your life without permission. Family isn't defined by blood. It's defined by behavior. And sometimes the bravest thing you'll ever do is let go of the people who were supposed to love you, but couldn't. Don't wait until they break you to realize you've always had the power to leave. I didn't get justice by screaming louder. I found peace by becoming someone they couldn't predict or control. So now I turn to you. What would you have done on that island? Would you have waited for them to come back? Or would you have built your own boat? Let me know in the comments. Type 1 inch if this story touched you, or share where you're watching from. And if this wasn't your thing, I still want to hear why. I read every message. Your story matters too. And if this hit home, even a little, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. We tell real stories here, raw ones, healing ones, stories that remind you you're not alone. The next chapter could be yours, and I'd be honored to help you tell it.